No cleaner had lasted a week with the twin terrors, until Miss Angela walked through the door. "These girls are possessed," screamed Linda, the 15th cleaner, sprinting out of the grand Westchester estate, dripping in blue paint and glitter, broom still in hand. Billionaire property. Mogul Richard Langston stood in the doorway, sighing as he wrote yet another severance check. His 9-year-old twin daughters, Ava and Arya, had broken every adult who dared to work in the house since their mother died 3 years ago. From the top of the staircase, the angel-faced blondes waved with innocent charm masks that hid their daily chaos. Glue on doorknobs, paint instead of soap, snakes in purses. Richard was at his wit's end until his assistant suggested one last hope. Angela Thomas, a 42-year-old, single mother of 7 with no college degree but a lifetime of grit and grace. From the moment Angela arrived in her old Honda and calm smile, things shifted. She saw through the girls' pranks, met their manipulation with quiet strength, and slowly, without yelling or punishment, unlocked the hurt beneath their rebellion. When she told them she, too, lost her mother at 9, the twins froze. Someone finally understood. For the first time in years, Ava and Arya ran into an adult's arms willingly. Angela didn't just survive the first week. She began something far greater. Healing. 2 broken hearts with love, resilience, and truth. No one survived a week with the twins until Angela said, "I'm not leaving. Not even if you try to break me." For billionaire real estate mogul Richard Langston, the sound of his front door slamming had become routine. This time, it was Linda, the 15th cleaner in just 8 months. She ran down the stone steps of his mansion, soaked in blue paint, hair tangled with glitter, still gripping a broom. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "Your daughters are evil!" Richard closed his eyes and sighed. Inside, his 9-year-old twins, Ava and Arya, stood at the top of the marble staircase like 2 porcelain dolls, green-eyed, golden-haired, smiling sweetly. But behind that facade were minds sharper and more wounded than anyone could imagine. Since their mother, Isabel, died in a car accident 3 years ago, the girls had become emotionally unmanageable. They chased away every adult who dared come close, with sabotage, psychological tricks, and fake smiles. Glue on bathroom door handles, paint in the soap dispenser, a realistic rubber snake hidden in a purse. To outsiders, it looked like mischief. But to Richard, it was grief turned into chaos. "Please, Linda," he had begged, "I'll triple your salary. It's not about money," she had snapped before disappearing through the gates. It's survival. That evening, as Richard contemplated hiring full-time security instead of staff, his assistant, Margaret, hesitantly offered one final option. Her cousin knew someone named Angela Thomas. No degree, no resume of note. Just 42 years of surviving life's hardest challenges, raising 7 kids on her own, helping families torn apart by trauma, and never backing down from pain. Desperate, Richard agreed. Angela arrived the next morning in a faded blue Honda Civic, hair tied back, face calm, eyes observant. She stepped into the mansion like she'd seen 1,000 just like it, and wasn't impressed. She didn't flinch at the luxury. Instead, she noticed what others missed. The scratches on the banister, the crayon marks on the rug, the vases poorly glued back together. "Creative," she murmured, running her hand over the wall. Richard chuckled nervously. "Destructive. More like." "No," Angela replied. "Pain expresses itself in patterns. These girls aren't monsters. They're terrified." Upstairs, Ava and Arya watched from their bedroom window. They'd prepared traps again. A doll head in the fridge smeared with ketchup. Power outlets unplugged mid-cleaning. A sandwich stuffed with toothpaste. Angela encountered them all. But unlike the others, she never yelled, never panicked, never even flinched. "Ketchup in the fridge?" she asked. raising an eyebrow. That's not scary. That's Tuesday. In a house with boys. She cleaned the mess. Then she cleaned again. By lunch, the girls had started to unravel. Angela took a bite of the sabotaged sandwich, made a face, and put it down. I grew up hungry. I once ate toothpaste for dinner, she said softly, smiling. But let's make something real this time. Who wants to help? The twins didn't understand it. This woman who didn't scream, didn't threaten, didn't run. Why wasn't she afraid? Then Angela sat with them. Do you want me to leave? She asked gently. Ava muttered. Yes. Arya whispered. Number. The contradiction hung heavy in the air. Angela smiled. That's what pain does. It makes us push away people we hope will stay, just to see if they actually will. And then, for the first time in 3 years, both girls ran into the arms of an adult and cried. That evening, Richard came home to something that looked like a miracle. His daughters, cooking with someone, talking, laughing, no mess, no screaming, no broken furniture, just warmth. How was your first day? He asked. Educational, Angela replied. For all three of us. The next morning, instead of setting traps, Ava and Arya set the table. They cooked pancakes, badly, but proudly. Surprise! They yelled when Angela entered. She beamed. Girls, I think we've won the first round. But the true battle came weeks later, at the twins' birthday party. Wealthy families arrived, including Patricia Whitmore, the polished, prejudiced wife of a federal judge, and her snobby daughter, Madison. Patricia sneered at Angela. Are you sure? It's safe to leave someone like that around valuables, she whispered loudly to Richard. The twins overheard. And when Madison mocked them, she's just your maid. She doesn't care about you, the girl snapped. She's not our maid, Ava said with steel in her voice. She's our family. Later, when the twins confronted Angela about why she didn't defend herself, she explained, people like Patricia are terrified of losing what they think makes them special. That's why they make others feel small. But our response isn't anger. It's success. And success came. Angela was invited to speak at a national conference on childhood trauma. Her data, based on the twins' transformation, stunned the academic world. Even Patricia, sitting in the audience, was exposed when a recording played. Her own voice, spewing prejudice. Public shame followed. Angela's presentation changed everything. Her book was picked up by Harvard Press. Her methods became national standards. She didn't just heal 2 girls. She redefined how society viewed caregivers, trauma, and dignity. At the end of it all, when the girls asked if families had to look a certain way to be real, Angela answered, No, sweetheart. Families are made where love stays. And I'm not going anywhere. They called her just a maid, but what she did for 2 broken girls redefined family, love, and power forever. No one believed anyone could last more than a week with Ava and Arya Langston, the Billionaire's 9-year-old twins known not for their charm, but for their cruelty. After their mother, Isabel, died in a tragic car crash 3 years earlier, the girls had made it their mission to drive away every adult who dared enter their lives. 15 cleaners in 8 months had come and gone, all leaving behind stories of pranks, breakdowns, and emotional sabotage. The 15th cleaner, Linda, had barely made it past day 4. She was last seen sprinting out of the Langston estate, her hair drenched in blue paint, glitter stuck to her shirt, and tears streaming down her face as she shouted, Those girls aren't kids, they're demons. At the top of the staircase, Ava and Arya watched with innocent grins, waving sweetly as if they hadn't booby-trapped the pantry with a bucket of cold water and glued the bathroom. Door knob shut. Their father, Richard Langston, a billionaire real estate magnate, was at his breaking point. 15 employees in 8 months, girls, he sighed, rubbing his temples. You have to stop. But they were boring, Ava replied. twirling her perfect blonde hair. None of them understood us, Arya added. And that's when Margaret, Richard's longtime assistant, mentioned someone unusual. Her name is Angela Thomas. New degree, new fancy references. But she's raised 7 kids on her own and helped dozens of families on the verge of collapse. She doesn't run from chaos. She walks right into it. Richard didn't hesitate. He was too desperate. Angela arrived the next morning in a faded Honda Civic. Her clothes were simple, her presence calm, and her eyes sharp, kind, and quietly unshakable. She walked through the presence mansion not with awe, but with understanding. She noticed the scuffed banisters, the crayon marks hastily scrubbed from the rug, the cracks in the ceramic vases. These aren't signs of mischief, she said. They're signs of pain. When she finally met Ava and Arya, they were dressed in matching pink dresses, all smiles and politeness. But Angela wasn't fooled. "Which one of you put glue on the doorknob?" she asked with a smile. The twins blinked, startled. No adult had ever cut through the Gatian performance before. "We don't know what you mean," Arya said sweetly. Angela didn't argue. She just said, "You can keep the charade for now, but I see you." That first day, the twins went to work. A fake severed doll's head in the fridge, ketchup meant to mimic blood, toothpaste in her sandwich. Angela didn't scream or run. She calmly wiped off the ketchup, made herself a new lunch, and invited the girls to help. "I used to eat toothpaste when there was nothing else. But I think we can do better today. Want to help me make real food?" The girls weren't used to this. Someone who didn't react with fear or anger. Someone who didn't treat them like problems to be fixed or monsters to be avoided. Later, over sandwiches they'd made together, Angela asked gently, "Do you want me to leave?" Ava said, "Yes." Arya said, "Number." Angela just nodded. "That's okay. Wanting someone to leave before they can abandon you is a kind of protection, isn't it?" That night, for the first time in years, the twins fell asleep without screaming. And Richard, returning home to laughter and the smell of burnt pancakes, nearly cried when he saw his daughters willingly helping with chores. But the true test came weeks later, at their first birthday party since Isabel died. The mansion was filled with elite families, lawyers, socialites, politicians. Among them was Patricia Whitmore, wife of a federal judge and queen of local high society. She sneered when she saw Angela. "Richard, are you sure it's safe leaving the help alone with valuables?" she whispered, loud enough for the twins to hear. Angela didn't flinch. She kept arranging the dessert table. Later, Patricia's daughter Madison approached the twins. "She's not your family," she said, cruelly. "She's just a black maid who wants your dad's money." Ava clenched her fists. "She's not our maid. She's our family." That night, the girls confronted Angela. "Why didn't you say anything to her?" Angela smiled gently. "People like Patricia think power is in status. But the real power is in love. And love doesn't scream to be seen. It proves itself quietly." Then came the conference. Angela, once dismissed as just a maid, took the stage at the National Child Development Summit. Hundreds of educators, psychologists, and policy leaders sat in silence as she presented her case study on 2 children labeled impossible. Her charts, emotional assessments, and personal stories captivated the crowd. But what shocked the room most was the recorded audio. The girls had secretly recorded Patricia's cruel remarks. Angela played it as evidence of how prejudice from adults can trigger abandonment trauma in children. The auditorium fell silent. "I'm not here because of a degree," Angela said. "I'm here because I stayed. Because I chose. Love over status. And that made the difference." Applause erupted. Later, publishers competed for her story. Harvard signed her book. Professionals asked for mentorship. Richard watched it all, stunned. Angela he whispered. You're not just part of this family. You saved it. Ava hugged her tight. Now they all know how amazing you are. Angela smiled, tears in her eyes. No, baby. Now they know how amazing you are. I just helped you remember. She was just a maid until the richest girl in school called Grace family in front of everyone. For months, the name Angela Thomas was nothing more than a footnote to the Langston family, an emergency hire, someone willing to work with Richard Langston's wild twin daughters after 15 others had failed. But 3 weeks into her arrival, something changed. Something real. Ava and Aria Langston, once called unmanageable, now smiled, helped with breakfast, and even giggled when Angela told her silly stories about raising 7 children on her own. To celebrate this breakthrough, billionaire Richard Langston decided to host his daughter's first birthday party since their mother died 3 years earlier. It was to be a grand affair, complete with a private chef, a string quartet, and a guest list filled with New York's wealthiest families. For Richard, it was both a celebration and a public statement. My daughters are finally okay. But among the glittering guests was Patricia Whitmore, wife of a powerful federal judge and the unofficial queen bee of elite society. Her daughter, Madison, was 10 years old, spoiled, and infamous for repeating her mother's worst opinions with chilling precision. Angela had spent the morning quietly arranging plates and preparing cupcakes in the kitchen when she heard Patricia's voice slice through the party air. Richard, are you sure it's safe to leave that woman alone around valuables? You never really know with these people, Patricia whispered, fingers brushing her pearls. I had a maid. Her once turned out she was stealing silverware. Angela said nothing. She didn't flinch. But Ava and Aria, standing near the doorway, heard everything. The twins said nothing at first. But something dark flashed across their eyes. It was the same fury they used to aim at helpless maids. Only now, it burned for someone else. Later, on the lawn, Madison found the girls. With her practiced smirk and designer dress, she looked like a magazine cover. My mom says that woman is just your maid, Madison said, coolly. You shouldn't get too attached. She probably wants your dad's money. Ava's jaw tightened. Grace isn't our maid, she said, using Angela's middle name. The one they'd lovingly given her. She's our family. Madison scoffed. She's black. She's poor. You think she cares about you? She stayed when everyone else left. Aria snapped. She loved us when no one else could. Madison rolled her eyes. Whatever. You'll see. At that moment, Angela appeared behind them, holding a tray of homemade brownies. Brownie? She offered gently. Madison looked down at the dessert like it was poison. No thanks. I don't eat food made by people like you. Who knows what you put in it? Silence crashed over the party like thunder. Ava and Aria stared in disbelief. Angela's expression didn't change. She simply replied, That's okay. There are plenty of other treats on the table, and walked away. That night, after the guests had left, the twins exploded. Grace, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell Dad what that woman said about you? Abba demanded. Angela sat on the couch, motioning for them to sit. Because I don't need Patricia Whitmore to believe in me. I need you to believe in yourselves. But she insulted you, Aria cried. She made you sound like trash. Angela nodded. That says more about her than it does about me. People like Patricia are terrified, afraid of losing their status, their illusion of control. So they tear others down to feel powerful. The girls were quiet. Ava whispered, Have you always been treated like that? Angela smiled. More times than I can count. But I learned something important. The best. Revenge isn't yelling. It's thriving. Being so good, so kind, so brilliant, that they can never ignore you again. The next morning, Ava overheard something that stunned her. Angela was on the phone in the place, Willig. Kitchen, speaking softly. Yes, Dr. Mitchell. It's me, Grace. From the community college program 20 years ago. I never finished, but I've been collecting data. Real cases. There's a conference coming up, and I think these girls, it could change how we understand child trauma. Ava turned to Aria. Grace went to college. 3 weeks later, Grace took the stage at the National Conference on Child Development, held at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Hundreds of professionals sat in silence as she presented a groundbreaking case. 2 9-year-old girls, abandoned by grief, healed not through therapy, but through love and presence. She showed data, testimonials, and even played a secret audio recording the moment Patricia Whitmore humiliated her at the party. Gasps filled the room. Angela didn't gloat. She simply said, "Prejudice is a fear dressed as pride. But love unmasks it." Her book, Authentic Connections, was picked up by Harvard Press. Back home, Ava and Aria ran to her with the morning paper. The headline read, "Local. Caregiver redefines national child trauma methodology," with a photo of Grace receiving an award. "You're famous," Aria shouted. Grace knelt beside them. "No, my darlings. You're the reason this happened." And from that moment forward, no one ever called her just a maid again. She was, and always would be, Grace, the woman who taught them that family isn't what you're born into, it's who shows up and stays. She was the maid. But when the girls asked if she'd die like their mom, everything changed. Angela Thomas had survived a lot in her life: poverty, single motherhood, prejudice, but nothing quite prepared her for the moment. A little girl looked up at her from bed and asked, "Grace, will you die in a car crash like our mom?" The question struck her like a silent thunderclap. Ava and Aria Langston, the 9-year-old, twin daughters of billionaire Richard Langston, had spent 3 years pushing away every adult who dared come close. They didn't yell for help. They sabotaged it, replacing soap with paint, leaving snakes in purses, setting traps with buckets of cold water. 15 professionals had tried. 15 had failed. But Angela stayed. She had walked into the Langston estate with a worn backpack, old sneakers, and eyes that had seen the world's pain without turning away. At first, the girls tested her like they did everyone else. But when Angela didn't flinch, when she met their chaos with calm, they began to break. Not in the destructive way they used to, but in the way healing starts. Slow, unsure, full of cracks where the light finally gets in. And so, one quiet night, as Angela tucked the twins into bed, Ava whispered her deepest fear. "Promise us you won't die like Mommy." Angela sat down beside her, her heart caught in her throat. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "no, one can promise they'll never die. But I can promise you this. As long as I'm alive, you will always have a place in my heart. And if anything ever happens to me, you'll already know. You are loved, and you are strong enough to let someone else love you again." Across the room, Aria, who had pretended to be asleep, turned her face toward Angela. "The others were scared of us. Are you scared of anything?" Angela thought for a moment. "Yes. I'm afraid you'll grow up believing you have to be perfect to be loved. I'm afraid the world will tell you that being difficult means you don't deserve kindness. But most of all," she paused, "I'm afraid I won't help you see how extraordinary you already are." The next morning, something unprecedented happened. Instead of mischief, Angela walked into the kitchen to find the girls attempting to make pancakes. The kitchen was a flour-covered disaster zone, but their eyes shone with nervous hope. "Surprise!" they yelled. Angela laughed, wiping her hands on her apron. "I've never been happier to see batter on the ceiling." That was the day she knew she'd won the first battle. But she also knew it was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, the transformation continued. Laughter replaced silence. Curiosity replaced sabotage. And for the first time, the Langston house felt like a home, but it was a private transformation. Until Richard Langston made a decision that would change everything. He wanted to throw a birthday party for his daughters, the first since Isabel's death. The guest list was full of powerful names, investors, politicians, high society families. Among them, Patricia Whitmore, wife of a federal judge and socialite, known more for her pearls than her kindness. At the party, Patricia saw Angela setting the table and leaned toward Richard. "You're letting that woman near your silverware. Are you sure that's safe?" Angela didn't react, but Ava and Arya heard it all. They exchanged glances. Old wounds threatened to reopen. Later, Patricia's daughter Madison cornered them by the dessert table. "She's not your family," Madison said coldly. "She's just a black maid who wants your dad's money." Ava stepped forward. "She's not our maid. She's our Grace. She stayed. She made us pancakes. She held us when we cried. She loved us," Arya added. That night, the twins couldn't sleep. "Grace," Arya whispered, "why didn't you defend at yourself?" Angela sat between their beds. "Because I don't need to prove my worth to people who judge by what they see, not who I am." "But it wasn't fair," Ava said. "No, it wasn't," Angela agreed. "But people like Patricia, they're scared. Scared of losing the power they think makes them special. So they tear others down." "And you're not scared?" Arya asked. Angela smiled. "Only of letting you grow up thinking their opinion matters more than your truth." A week later, the girls overheard Angela on the phone. "Dr. Mitchell?" "Yes. It's Grace. Remember me from community college? I'm working with a family now. I think their case could change how we understand grief in children." The girl's eyes widened. Grace went to college. 3 months later, she took the stage at the National Child Development Conference. Her topic, healing trauma through unconditional connection. With charts, testimonials, and even video clips, she showed how 2 impossible girls transformed through love, not punishment. Then came the bombshell. Audio recordings of Patricia's bigotry, captured by the girls themselves. Gasps echoed. Patricia turned pale. Angela didn't gloat. She ended with this: "Children aren't broken. They're grieving. And sometimes, the bravest thing they do is test at us to see if we'll stay." I stayed. The room rose in a standing ovation. After the event, reporters swarmed. Publishers offered book deals, and Richard, stunned, said, "Grace, I hired you to clean, but you rebuilt my family." Angela smiled, hugging the girls. "You don't hire love. You earn it." The next day, Ava said, "Now everyone knows how amazing you are." "No," Grace whispered. "Now they know how amazing you are. I just helped you believe it." They mocked her as just a maid, but her name ended up in every national headline. 6 months after Angela Thomas first walked into the Langston estate with nothing but a second-hand backpack and a quiet determination, she found herself on the front page of New York Journal. The headline read, "Local expert transforms national understanding of child trauma." And beneath it, a photograph of her receiving the Academic Excellence Award from the president of the state university. Beside her stood the very girls who once chased every adult out of their lives. Ava and Arya. Langston once called impossible, now known as the miracle that rewrote the rules. But the journey that brought them here hadn't started with applause. It had started with a challenge. One few believed Angela could overcome. For 3 years, no one had lasted a week with the Langston twins. Since their mother's death, the girls had built emotional walls out of pranks and cruelty, weaponizing fear to test whether any adult would stay. 15 failed. Angela didn't. She stayed. She listened. She understood what others couldn't see. And when Ava asked one night, "Will you die in a car crash like our mom?" Angela didn't offer empty promises. She offered something better: truth wrapped in love. I can't promise how long I'll live, sweetheart. But I can promise that while I'm here, you will never have to doubt that someone loves you enough to stay. That moment marked the beginning of a transformation not just for the girls, but for Angela, too. They cooked together, played together, healed together. Ava and Arya, once masters of sabotage, started leaving little notes under Angela's door. Thank you for making pancakes. You're the first one who didn't yell, please don't leave. But just as things blossomed privately, Angela's public identity remained unseen. Until Richard Langston decided to host the girls' first birthday party since the tragedy. That's when Patricia Whitmore showed up, dressed in designer silk and carrying decades of class prejudice like perfume. Patricia took one look at Angela and whispered loudly to Richard, "You're letting that woman near the silverware? You know what they're like." Ava and Arya heard it all. Later, when Patricia's daughter Madison cornered the girls and called Angela just the maid, Ava's voice trembled but didn't falter. "She's not our maid, she's our family. She didn't come for money. She came because we needed someone to love us when we were hardest to love." That night, the girls asked Angela why she hadn't defended herself. "Because," Angela said gently, "I don't need Patricia to see my worth. I need you to know yours. And the best revenge against people who underestimate us is success." What no one at that party knew was that Angela had been quietly documenting everything, not to prove herself, but to prove that children labeled too difficult are usually just too heartbroken to trust. She had pages of notes, behavior logs, emotional patterns, an entire archive of evidence that love heals where punishment fails. She reached out to an old classmate, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. "Remember that research I started 20 years ago but never finished. I have new data now, real data, and two extraordinary girls who are ready to help." Months later, Angela took the stage at the National Conference on Child Development, surrounded by the nation's top psychologists, educators, and policymakers. With clarity, compassion, and quiet power, she presented the Langston case, not as a sob story, but as scientific proof that trauma, when met with presence and unconditional love, can be reversed. Then she did something no one expected. She played a recording one the twins had captured on their tablet. Patricia's voice, unmistakable, dripping in prejudice. You never know with people like her. They act sweet until they get what they want. Gasps filled the room. Angela paused, then said softly, "When children hear things like this, they don't just absorb the words, they absorb the fear, and that fear becomes their behavior. If we want to heal them, we have to start with how we treat each other." By the end of her talk, professionals from Ivy League schools lined up to shake her hand. A publisher from Harvard Press offered her a book deal on the spot. Her research was requested by 3 government agencies. And Patricia Whitmore? She resigned from 2 charity boards within the week. Her reputation, once pristine, was now a case study in institutional prejudice. But Angela didn't celebrate the downfall of Patricia. She celebrated the rise of something bigger. At home, when the girls showed her the newspaper with her face on the front page, Angela hugged them tightly. "You're famous now," Ava shouted. Angela smiled. "No, my loves, we are. Because now the world knows what I already knew. The day I walked into your lives, that you were never broken. You were waiting to be seen." And with that, she proved something deeper than any headline. True transformation doesn't start in headlines or conferences. It starts the moment someone stays, listens, and loves a child who's too scared to hope. They laughed at her like she was just the help, but she walked off that stage. Legend. When Angela Thomas stepped onto the stage at the National Child Development Conference, no one in that elite audience expected much. To them, she was just the maid from the Langston estate. But by the time she finished her presentation, complete with emotional data, real case studies, And the now viral audio of Patricia Whitmore's cruel prejudice, The Room, had erupted into thunderous applause. The same woman who was once ridiculed for her skin color, her car, and her job title now stood as a national voice on childhood trauma recovery. Offers poured in. Publishing, contracts, media interviews, speaking tours. But when asked what meant most to her, Angela simply pointed to Ava and Arya, once broken, now brave, and said, "They are the reason I stayed." Angela didn't seek revenge. She didn't need it. Her victory was quiet, powerful, and permanent. She proved that character outlasts cruelty, and love outshines status. Never underestimate someone because of their job, their clothes, or where they come from. True power doesn't scream, it heals. And sometimes, the most extraordinary people walk into our lives disguised as the ones we overlook. Have you ever been underestimated and proved them wrong? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that remind us dignity always wins, and the most powerful hearts are often the quietest ones.